Hi, this is Wayne Bilal. In this month's feature interview, we're talking to Kris Yagel, who is a West Point graduate, top-rated Army leader, sales star, inspirational speaker. Who I got to start with a simple question. I'll let you help me with the intro. How and why did you come from a graduate of the U.S. West Point Academy to vice president of sales at Smart Strategies, which have hired in the past to do some help with my sales training, so I have some knowledge of what you guys do, but how'd you make that transition and what happened? I'll let you help me with the intro.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you look at traditional pathways for salespeople, I'm not in that list anywhere. I took a different route, very atypical career. So yeah, I did go to the military academy, and then I was an Army officer for a little while. I got out in '05 after serving for 6 years active duty. And the reason I got out was more physical rather than anything. And the Army kind of beat me up. Had a few surgeries, and I thought, man, I'm not even 30 years old, and I had major surgeries. So I got out and I did project management in the building automation industry out in Dallas, Fort Worth. And then for family reasons, we wanted to relocate back to El Paso. So I threw my resume out there, and sure enough, I landed a sales job in medical device sales, which is kind of rare to get into. It didn't hurt that the vice president of sales for that company was a West Point grad also,
Mm-hmm.
and the good old boy network does exist in the academy grads, and he sure enough took a chance on me with no formal sales training. So anyway, long story short, I did well in sales with medical devices, and I started looking at my resume and things I've done over the years, and I realized I've done in the Army, if you want to, you can loosely associate that I've done HR, operations, training, project management, sales management. I looked at all these things that I've done. I thought, wow, what can I do with this? I'm really not geared to do one of those for the rest of my life. How can I stay kind of involved in all of them? I thought, you know what, perfect. I'll consult, I'll train, I'll coach people on what made me successful in those areas. And so I became open to the idea. I met Glenn through basically a warm referral from a gentleman that we both knew, and the rest is kind of history. Glenn brought me on board sight unseen, and he said, "Why don't you come on in and work with me? I've been looking for a partner for about 6 months." So, the transition was kind of easy for me. I definitely wanted to continue helping people. And this way, it gave me more of a broad way to do that. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service. If you haven't heard it before, I'm sure you have, but thank you anyways.
Oh, thanks, Wayne.
Um, Talk before I even get into my questions. What are you doing with Smart Strategies? Talk a little bit of what give me your 30-second speech.
Sure. Well, I'm the vice president of sales. Basically, I'm expanding. Glenn brought me in as a way to expand business. He's got a client load that he's had for quite some time. He's looking to expand and reach new markets. And he thought, with my background, I could probably touch on some areas that he wasn't able to penetrate before, just based on some of my connections and my experience. So that's what I'm doing. I'm basically trying to penetrate new markets and get some companies that hadn't been doing business with us before. I have a lot of contacts from the military that reach all around the nation too, so we're looking to expand further into other cities and travel a little bit more this year and things of that nature. So I'm basically bringing new ideas to the table as well. Glenn has been doing this for a long time. He's a masterful speaker. I've not heard speakers on his level many times in my life. I've heard Colin Powell speak, and I would put Glenn right up there with Colin Powell. He's a great speaker. But I'm bringing kind of some new ideas and some fresh ideas, and I'm kind of reinvigorating Glenn. So that's another kind of like a secondary duty I have. But so yeah, it's been very enjoyable.
Well, it's not too hard to get Glenn invigorated.
Yeah, it really isn't.
he's a ball of energy. Unless he's dropped off in the last 5 years, which I totally doubt.
It's probably ramped up, to be honest.
That I imagine. I want to start with, I guess, the first question I ran into. I read an article recently, and I really do believe it, that the number one reason businesses fail when they first start off is they just don't have any they don't concentrate on the sales and marketing aspect, and they really seldom have any um, experience and skills. Have you run into that? What do you see when you're out there?
Yeah, that's absolutely something I've run into, Wayne. In fact, I'm gonna touch on a theme that you'll see kind of throughout just about all your questions, I imagine. But you know, a lot of times as new business owners, what I found is we tend to be task oriented, and the reason we do that is because we want feedback immediately. Um, for instance, today I want to organize my books. By the end of the day, if the book's organized, you have immediate feedback and gratification. That's tangible. Hey, the books are done, they're on the shelf, good to go. With sales, sometimes the results aren't tangible. Hey, I met a new contact. That contact might not come to fruition until 3 months later, 4 months later. So when we go to bed at night, we think about our day. We think, man, I had coffee with 4 people, but what did I really get done? Well, what new business owners don't realize is that one of those coffees could lead to a multi-million-dollar account, and it's a process. So the people skills aspect is really what you need to focus on, I think, as a new business owner. And what you need to do is make the results tangible. You start the day out, you put on your list, okay, I want to meet with these people today. What's the payoff? And so you understand what the payoff is. So it's very easy to get wrapped up in that task mindset. A good example I use is it's like the kid back in high school that used to go home at night and copy his notebook over because it was too messy during class that day. Well, that's activity. That's really not productivity. Take a few extra seconds to write a little neater, and don't worry about copying over again. Worry about the things that are going to matter, like studying for the next test, reading the next chapter, doing your homework early, stuff like that. So we get wrapped up sometime in tasks because we have control of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The number one thing I always find, it's almost where you have to start with a business owner is, they're too busy to do what you ask them to do. Yeah. And, you're sitting down and I always start with a task that I ask them to do is actually write down everything they're doing for a week or two. And then, go to Starbucks or some library or someplace out of your normal place, analyze it and say, would you pay somebody $100 or $200 an hour to do that job? And you'd be amazed how often 80 to 90% of what they're doing, they really shouldn't be doing. I'm assuming you run into the same kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's really just human nature. It's not a matter of work ethic. They're not choosing. They're not lazy. In 99% of the cases, they're busy all the time. They're moving. If you talk to them, they barely have time to catch a breath and talk to you. It's just that their focus is just a little bit off. Maybe a hair this way, a hair that way.
Totally guilty. I've been asked recently, actually, if I had to pick up roots, sell this firm, move to a different city, how long would it take me to get back to where I'm at? Well, I've been doing this. We started in 91, so 22 years. I could probably get back to where I'm at in 5 years, if not quicker. And the number one reason really is the sales and marketing skills. I mean, when I started, I took great pride in being a good CPA, but, and I really hated salespeople, sorry. They were an interruption, all right? And, it seemed like a soft skill, which it is. It's a people skill, which a lot of people who start businesses seem to be technical people, like myself. So how do you take somebody like that and say, all right, now you really, if you want to survive, you got to be a salesperson. How do you do that? That's like five questions, so pick the one you want.
So how do you take someone who's not, I guess you could say, naturally a salesperson and turn them into one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it possible?
I believe so. There are certain, I'll be honest with you, and there's going to be a lot of people that may disagree with what I'm about to say, but I truly believe it. There are certain people that can gravitate towards sales, and they're naturally cut out to be a salesperson. They just have some innate ability, maybe even through genetics, that just make them probably it gives them higher potential in sales, just like leadership.
Yeah, I've met them.
The classic, the classic argument is, are leaders born or made? Well, I believe to some degree they're born, and to the rest of the degree they're made. Just the same with salespeople. So I think what you need to do with salespeople is teach them a few skills that are basically critical to success, and really that's just how to connect well with others. You have to establish common ground in some way. Just for example, Wayne, sitting here with your background there behind you, I'm looking for different ways I can connect with you. I could probably come up with 3 different areas where I could probably come up with a personal connection just by being observant.
Mm-hmm.
So connection skills are one thing, and I think that goes along with awareness. First of all, we have to be aware of others and aware of, what value they have, where they're from, just take note of different things. So awareness, connection skills, and then one thing we also have to do for new salespeople is they have to realize it's not an event. A sales call or a sales interaction is not an event. It's a process, and in a process, there's different stages, there's different levels of interaction that are going to occur over time. I think a lot of times, because of the task-oriented nature that a lot of new business owners have, and a lot of non-salespeople, they want to make it an event. Okay, bam, I met with this guy, I closed the sale. Good. Instead of, hey, I met with this guy, I connected a little deeper, I found out how his kid did at the basketball game over the weekend, stuff like that. So I think that's critical.
You kind of hit what I was going to do next, the mistakes that you see business owners make when they're starting off in sales. Is there anything you want to add to what you said? I mean, they make it an event, they don't prioritize it. What else do you see them doing?
Follow through. Follow up and follow through. I was talking, one of the things, and you're laughing there.
Oh, it's so true. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. One of the things that we do in the program I brought to the table at Smart Strategies is I call it a right seat ride program. I will go out and ride with sales reps, especially outside sales reps, and you can't get any more real than actually observing their actual interactions with prospects or customers. So I'll ride with them. I'll jump in their car and we'll go out to accounts, and they'll introduce me as an associate, and I'll just watch and observe. And one of the things I picked up on is probably 9 out of 10 times when I've done that, we'll get back in the car, and I don't say a lot the first half of the day. I just kind of observe, and take in everything. 9 times out of 10, we get back in the car and we get ready for the next call or the next stop, but they won't record anything that happened at the call that we just left. And with technology nowadays, it's so easy just to throw an event in your calendar, and the event should say something like, follow up with this person in 1 day. In the notes section, you put the pertinent things you want to follow up on. Mm-hmm. You might want to put, hey, by the way, ask them how the baseball game, their son Kyle had a baseball game yesterday, ask them how the game went. Something like that. Something that shows a care, a level of caring and awareness. So 9 times out of 10, they don't record anything from the interaction. And that's so easy to correct. All that is habit shaking, basically picking up a new habit to record what happened and put your follow-ups in the calendar. And once the follow-ups are in the calendar, the great thing about technology nowadays is forget about them. Just put it in the calendar and forget about it.
Yeah, I call it a data dump.
Do the rest.
Yeah, I call that a data dump. Get it out of there, forget about it, move on. So
yeah.
Kind of some of the things you brought up there are pretty interesting. I mean, so sales skills that you think a business owner needs to survive. You mentioned they got to have some empathy. They need to be organized. What else would you bring in? I mean, they need to listen. They need to observe. What other things are you looking at? Or does that pretty much cover a lot of it?
Yeah, I'm big on the people skills, on the soft skills. I think that'll drive the train on so much of their progress. Another thing that I like to talk about is organization and time management. I won't really talk about time management. Let me talk a little bit about organization. Okay, when I teach organization, I get a lot of pushback from people. In fact, if I do it in a seminar setting, when maybe there's 30, 50 people in a room, and I say, okay, we're going to talk about organization, I'll hear some grumbles, some sighs, of all the topics, why do we talk about organization? I'm just not a neat person. I'm not organized. That's just how I am. And I say, okay, let me tell you why we organize. Has anyone, and I usually say, has anyone ever planned a trip to go away for the weekend? And you want to leave at 9 o'clock on Saturday. And by the time you get out of there, it's noon, you get to the destination late, and you have about a third of the fun that you were planning to have with your family or friends or something like that. And everybody, pretty much 95% of everybody says, yeah, that's happened to me. And I say, well, what caused you to leave at noon? Well, we couldn't find the cooler and the sunscreen and all this other stuff. I said, so by being disorganized, you are not at the right place at the right time. And in business, you have to capitalize on every opportunity you have. You have to be at the right place at the right time. So if you're running out and you don't have your collection of proposals or something like that, or if you run out and you can't find your iPad, or you lost your keys, or you might miss an opportunity that could lead to taking your business to the next level as far as sales. So organization is critical, and I profess to be very type A when it comes to organization. I usually tell people if we had a power outage in my house and you gave me a list of 10 things to find, I could go do it. I could reach in a drawer and probably hit the exact item that you want, because I'm very, very organized. And the only reason I do that is not because I have a OCD disorder or anything. It's because I want to save time and spend it where I want to spend it. Take control of my time. Organization is critical for new business owners. They really have to have their ducks in a row with that. Even not to belabor this point, Wayne, but even if it means they take an extra week on the setup of their business to get organized. A lot of times what they'll do is, business owners will do is they just want to get out there. They want to start hitting the road and, pounding the pavement, talking to people, and their office is a train wreck. Take an extra week or 3 days or 2 weeks even, and get organized. And then when you go out there, everything is organized. Your time's better. When you come home, you don't have to worry about it. Because once you step into the fray, there's not going to be a lot of downtime.
No.
You got to take it up front. So.
The only way to get downtime is to not sleep.
Yeah.
Anyways, you mentioned a couple of the organization. I can't stress that. The skill set of putting systems in place and being organized will multiply you dramatically. I can give examples, but I don't want to get off on that tangent. But another thing that I think I have trouble getting across to business owners is, you're right, sales is a people skill. We tend to buy from people we like. We tend to buy from people we trust and people that we consider friends. Well, if I've just met you, that's pretty hard to say I know you, like you, trust you, and you're a friend. And that's why networking events, do you like those? Do you not like those? How important is it to a new business owner?
Networking event, they're very important, but you got to pick your poison. You pick which one you go to. And the reason I say it that way is because the tendency is to go to all of them, and then you become a professional meeting goer instead of a salesperson. They're not all created equal, and you really have to. And if you start going to a regular event and you notice the same people are coming, time to switch. Time to switch events. So networking is critical. I did a class at a seminar recently, and we went around the room, and I said, I just want you to come up with a ballpark number. There's about 35 people in the room, and my task to them was, I want you to think of your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your blog, your YouTube, whatever social media you have. Now think of how many friends you have on there, and I just want you to come up with a real quick number of how many friends you have. One girl said like 3,000. I was blown away. She had like 3,000 friends and contacts. So we went around the room and everybody named some numbers. Some said 500, some said 1,000. Now, what I told them to do was, now imagine if during the breaks and during our seminars we give long breaks, and the reason is we want people to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine if you worked your way around the room and got to know everybody just here in this room, 35 people. You're number one, and you got to know 34 other people. We multiplied it out and we came up with 200,000 contacts in that room, either first or second tier contacts. Now imagine if you got to know everybody and you had access now to that many contacts, and everybody just, it was dead silence. You could have dropped a pin and everyone would have heard it. It was just, they're like, wow, I never knew networking was that important. I said, absolutely. So it's critical. It's critical, Wayne. You really got to do your networking.
And you probably have mentioned something that I think works a lot better is the social media, if you would work that right. And we might have you on to talk about that at another time, because that one's kind of interesting.
Can I say one more thing
sure,
about networking?
Of course, go on.
There's a caution here. I've seen people that get it and they understand that networking is important, but they go about it the wrong way. And the way they go about it is, how can this person, when they go to a networking event, every time they talk to somebody, they think, how can this person help me? And that's totally wrong. You got to turn that around. I mean, not to get into the Bible, but you got to serve others, you know, and you got to look at it as, how can I help this person? Or if I add this person to my network, how can it benefit the other people in my network? Or, you know, if you take a serving approach, and how can you help them? I guarantee you, it'll come back to you. It'll come back to you tenfold. But you can't go in it with a "what's in it for me" type attitude.
And you can spot that. People are much more savvy than they used to be. If the first contact you get from somebody is they're trying to sell you something,
right,
you got a problem. I got it in my bulletin board up there, and it's you've heard it too, I'm sure, but it just doesn't hurt to remind you, because we get busy and you get self-centered if you're not careful. You know, people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Very true.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. And it's a strong, you know, really, in my opinion, that's how it needs to work. If you give, and we try to do that. I mean, we give out, sometimes I'm accused of giving out way too much information, but I don't believe that. I mean, you've seen the same thing, I'm sure, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry. When I first got, just a quick story.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
When I first got into sales, you know, I was new to the game. I never had any formal sales training. What I didn't realize is I was good at sales when I started, just because I had good people skills. But I was kind of new, so I was seeking mentorship. There's another micro point there. Always seek counsel from those who have gone before you. Seek mentorship. There's nothing wrong. A lot of times business owners get into this, I got to do it myself. No. There's nothing wrong with seeking counsel and mentorship from other people.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I asked one of the senior sales guys who had been doing medical device sales for years and very successful. I asked him for some advice. He said something that I'll never forget. He said, when you establish your customers, he said, every third visit or interaction, maybe it's a phone call or a visit, don't talk about business whatsoever. Just go visit them and talk to them about their family, their vacation that summer, something personal to them, their favorite sports team. And when they say, what can I do for you today? You say, nothing, I just came to see how you're doing. Have a great day. And he said, do that about every third stop. And I did that. I listened to him, and that did more for me than I can even communicate as far as sales go.
People want to buy from friends.
Yeah.
You know, and people that care. You know, and that's really it. You know, this is kind of one of the problems I see with small business owners is they want the easy button. I love that commercial. They want the easy button because they want it to be simple. Everybody wants one. And my argument is it probably doesn't exist, but maybe you know of one I don't know.
An easy button in regards to sales and marketing?
Yeah.
I can't tell you I know of one.
To me, it's always been a lot of work and planning.
Yeah.
So, that's been my argument. I don't think there really is an easy button. I mean, I don't know if I was hoping you had one because I work real hard at it. So I'd like to work less.
You know, if I can come up with one easy button, and it's not very easy, but it's kind of as close as I can come up with, is constant reflection. A lot of times we don't reflect on interactions with people, that just like the OSRs I told you about, we get in the car and they won't write anything down, they don't reflect on the interaction. If you constantly reflect and refine what you're doing, that will shortcut your success. So we really, but don't get into what happened to me. I was a football player back in school. I was a running back, and I remember I used to go back to the huddle after running, and I would analyze the last play so much. Oh, I should have cut here. I should have spun there. I should have done this. I would analyze it so much that it would affect how I performed the next play, and not in a good way. Mm-hmm. So don't get into analysis paralysis. Just reflect on what happened, make some minor tweaks, and adjust your behavior and move on. But if you have that mindset of constant reflection and refinement, that'll shortcut your success because you'll be continually improving.
Yeah, that's important. So really sales, that's kind of what makes sales hard, I think, is because it's you got to concentrate on the other person, you got to serve them, but you got to know what you're doing. And yes, it's that dynamic sometimes can fight each other if you're not careful.
Very true.
Speaking, matter of fact, we're helping a restaurant locally, and it's a Mexican food restaurant. So, there's none of those in El Paso. And we're struggling, or he's struggling with the concept because we're trying to beat into him. And my question to everybody that I work with, out of all the choices out there that the consumer has, why you? Including staying at home and cooking it themselves. There's a few good Mexican cooks that can cook at home. You got to be able to answer that. But I run into a lot of people, and I know I'm kind of changing lanes a little bit, but it's up this, where they feel like they're selling a commodity. How do you help them? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Are you familiar with a guy that's become popular recently, maybe in the last few years, Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
You heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
He's on TED Talks, and he's on all the, he's a big sensation in sales and marketing, really. And one of the things he talks about is people don't buy what you have, they buy why you do it. Basically, they buy your belief system. Great example he uses is why do people own Mac products, or the iPhone and the notebooks and stuff like that, the iPad, because they believe in what Macintosh is trying to do in changing the world and innovation. They believe those things. When it comes down to it, good Mexican food is the same across the board. It's all good. But if a new restaurant owner is trying to, if they believe in revolutionizing the service industry, for instance, we believe in excellent service. We believe in giving you the best experience that you're ever going to have. Everything else being equal, the food's all the same, the price is about the same, but maybe their belief is service. I think that's a differentiator, especially in the restaurant industry, the service, especially, to be honest with you, especially in El Paso. I mean, if you get excellent service, the food could be mediocre. We'll go back for the service, just for that. So
yeah. No, yeah, you're 100% right. And I think you hit on something that's important there, though. I mean, everybody will pick up a marketing book, and they got to have their tagline and everything, and they'll grab something that sounds good, that differentiates them, but they don't believe it. And if you can't believe it, people will spot that. I mean, you won't do it consistently, and you can't. There really has to be something that is different. If you're just another Mexican food taco joint, well, there isn't anything. So don't you believe that? I mean, that's kind of what he was saying too. You got to have a strong belief system that revolutionizes or stands out from your competition, and then you got to communicate that and walk the walk.
I agree totally. I mean, and you said something very important, Wayne. you can only fake the funk so long. Eventually, your true colors are going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not something that you're doing that's coming from your heart, your passion, that's gonna be exposed at some point. So, when you help people, you got to do it because you want to help people, not because you see some dollar signs floating around there. Or if you want to provide a certain product, you got to do it because you're passionate about that product and you think it's going to change the way people live or do business or something like that. So, yeah, you definitely got to line up your passion with what you're doing.
A lot of this we've covered, so I'm going to skip some things, go someplace else. I've been making an argument lately that the new economy and the new customer, I'm going to say truthfully, since 2008. Before then, I've been doing this long enough. Wait here. Before 2008, it was sometimes in the consulting business, it was actually harder for me to sell because they were doing fine. You could almost do anything, and people were spending. And so they had problems with we're doing fine. We can live with these problems. 2008, world changed. The consumer is much more savvy, much more careful. Social media has come up, and I've been making an argument that becoming good at your business, which by definition, half of that at least is sales and marketing. I'd say 80% is sales and marketing, is no longer something that you can put off. It's a necessity, because what I'm saying is in a particular niche, 80 to 85% of the business is gravitating to the top one or two people, and the rest are fighting over the scraps. So I think if you're that passion and everything you're talking about is required to get to be that one or two person. Are you seeing the same kind of thing, or am I just seeing something I want to see?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Before I answer that, did you want me to kind of touch on how social media plays in there?
Sure. Yeah, that's not what I had put on here, but social media now, in my mind, changes the game. And I'll let you go rather than me. I'm interviewing you.
No, you said something critical. I was working with another OSR out in Dallas recently, and he was part of a lumber company. And we went in to talk to a builder, who buys lumber, and on a regular basis. They were a custom builder, but they had a very high sales volume, so they did a lot of work. And the lady we talked to said that because of the advancements in communication and technology, she had 10 lumber vendors come to see her all the time. And they were pretty much equal across the board. Every time they sent a proposal, it was pretty much the same. The communication was pretty quick because of email and different things like that. So the only differentiator then, if lumber's lumber, 2x4 is a 2x4. Mm-hmm. I mean, so the product wasn't differentiated.
That's definitely a commodity.
Yeah, for sure. And then the communication was not a differentiator. So what's left to be the differentiator? Well, her top the most volume, her top vendor at the time that they bought the most lumber from, she said if he walked in this door today, I might not recognize him. I said, really? So you might not recognize the guy that you buy the most lumber from. And Billy, the guy I was working with, said, you see me a lot. She said, oh yeah, I recognize you, Billy. And so what I realized there, and what Billy and I talked about when we got back in the car, was nowadays everything's equal. It's all accessible to you. Social media is by and large free for small businesses. You can sign up for LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. Those are all free. The difference is, you basically how you interact with the customer. Are they going to recognize you when you walk in the door? What the differentiator is really the high touch that they're going to get. One thing in my industry is something that I've kind of grown to not like so much is whenever you see a speaker talk about something, at the end, they always try to sell you something, a book or a CD. And I understand why they're doing that. I understand, you got to build from product to product to product. However, my approach is I would just like to give some dynamic talks that change people's lives and they will find me. They're going to Google me. They'll find me on LinkedIn. They'll find me all across the board. They'll buy my stuff. I don't want to plug it every time because it almost takes away from the sincerity of my talk. Because a lot of times they think at the end, for those last 30 seconds when I throw in that book pitch or whatever, they may think that everything before that was a lead-in to that book pitch. So I think I got off on a tangent there, Wayne.
No, actually it's good, so don't worry about it. Because I think you're hitting where I'm talking about, because I take myself, when I was working with Glenn, he probably had a lot of trouble with me because I literally hate to sell. Okay? Yeah. He was trying to get me to cold call, and I did it. Worked all right, doing those kind of things. And I didn't have much of a client base back then. Now we're doing quite well. But over the years, I've had to change from what you're saying exactly, of more of giving, and differentiating. But I can close, but I don't consider it closing because I never try to sell.
Yeah.
All right. When they come to me, and now I've created a system where they do come to me, I can say that I solve 100% of their problems. I mean, what they came in and asked me, we've given them, well, 95. Some are beyond help. But let's just go there, all right? Some I literally have to refer them to a bankruptcy attorney and say, I'm sorry, guy, you're way in over your head. Enough is enough. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I sold 100%, because that wasn't what my goal was. My goal was to sit down and present, all right, here's your problem. Here's your options. Of course, we may or may not be one of them. Sometimes we're not. But, a lot of times we are, and I still treat it as all the others. An example, an easier one for you to understand, QuickBooks. Somebody comes into us, their books are a mess, and we show QuickBooks and say, all right, here's the choices you have. You can do it yourself. We can train you. You can hire somebody. Here's the pros and cons of that. You can outsource it. Here's the pros and cons of that. Here's how much you're likely to spend at all the different options, and here's where you're at. Tell me what you want to do.
Yeah.
I don't consider that selling, really. I'm actually saying, here's your problem. You came to me with it. Here's your options of what you can do. Pick one. And we move from there. Is that selling? I think it is, because I end up with a customer, but I'm not trying to sell.
Yeah. When you talk about selling, most people think of the slick back hair car salesman.
There you go.
Yeah. And that's the first thing that comes to your mind. Oh, he's selling. When somebody says to me, I'm not a salesperson, or I don't like selling, the first thing I say to them is, or the first question I ask them is, are you married? And they say yes. I say, well, you sold somebody on something. That's the greatest sales, the sales, basically sales accomplishment all the time. You convince somebody to spend the rest of their life with them, or with you. So anyways, the second thing I say is, think of yourself as a solution provider. Do you like helping other people? Mm-hmm. Yes. And Wayne, I can tell you do. It comes across in the way you're talking. Well, if somebody comes to you with a need, you got to think of what you have to offer as a solution to their need. It's all about helping people, and that's another reason why you network. The larger network you have, the more resources you have available to help others. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it that way, your network will get really large, because you're looking at it from a pure standpoint. So think of yourself as a solution provider. If you think of yourself that way, you're going to connect better. You're going to build trust faster. I was thinking the other day, I'm really not a good closer, but I have a very high closing ratio. Mm-hmm. It's really high, but I'm not a good closer. In fact, I had to look up. Somebody wanted me to talk about closing the other day, and I had to look up closing techniques on the internet, because I don't know a lot of the different types of closes. I basically use an assumptive close all the time, because by the end of my interaction with somebody, they like me, they trust me, and typically it's a no-brainer. They're going to probably buy. Mm-hmm. So I don't use any hard techniques. I think if you take that approach, your close will happen well before the traditional close. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%, because there's no doubt about it. I agree with you. I don't think I know. I've read them, I studied them, and went, that doesn't work for me. I mean, I have my own approach that I've developed over time, and I know it works because I probably close using that term, which I hate. All right, because I don't see it that way. I end up with a sale because I'm helping them, helping solve their need and their problem, which I spent probably, if I have an hour, hour and a half meeting, I probably spent an hour on that. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to make sure I understand where they're at, what their problem is, what they've tried, where they're, what hasn't worked for them, what has worked. And you're right. I mean, we end up because I'm putting the options out there and telling them there's where you're at. And sometimes, you got to, if you're trying to close, what I see as a problem, and insurance agents are some of the worst in my mind. They have a product that they try to make fit every situation, and sometimes it doesn't. And
Yeah.
you've probably seen that too. I don't want to pick on them because I got a lot of people that I refer to, and some of them are pretty good. I mean, they do a good job.
If you have a true problem solver's heart or a resource provider's heart, you can tell by basically one thing. If at the end of the conversation you realize that their need does, or your solution does not match their need, and you say, "Listen, I'd love to sell you something, but I can't help you. I just do not provide what you need. However, if you're willing to spend a few more minutes with me, let me tap into my network and I'll find someone who I think can help you." If somebody does that, just that little piece right there, they have their hearts in the right place, and it'll come back to them. It'll come back to them. Not that you look for it, but it will come back. It's almost a law of the universe.
It really is. And to be honest about it, if you sold that person, my argument is you're actually not helping yourself because you're selling them something they don't really need. And we make promises during the sales process, both verbally and implied. And one of them is you can solve their problem. Well, if you really can't, it's counterproductive, really, for you to sell them something. I think part of the sales process, as much as anything, and the term I've read is disqualification, where you're disqualifying them. I don't like that term because it kind of says they don't meet up to your standards. It's more they're just not, they don't need your solution. And I think that's kind of what you were trying to say right there. And then just take the extra step instead of saying, "Sorry, I'm done. Let me see if I can still help you." And
You always, it's that last step that's really critical. Because that's why you build a big network. So you have resources, people you can call. I can't help you, but a friend of mine can. Call this guy, tell him I sent you. He'll take great care of you.
Yeah. I tracked last March, it wasn't this March, March 12th, just out of curiosity, how many times I referred somebody. And in the month of March, obviously, I see a lot of people. And it was like 90-something. I was blown away. I didn't realize, because you just do it out of habit. I was just like, "Oh, you need an attorney. This is who I would use for that. You need this." And they tend to use us as the general practitioner. They come to us with all kinds of weird problems. I'm gonna skip one, but there is one. I mean, there's a lot here, and we've covered it indirectly or directly, and we ran kind of long. But there is one thing I wanted to talk about. Salespeople tend to be very, and you touched on it a little bit on follow-up. They tend to be very, and business owners too. They want the next conquest. And I'm always, when I walk into a new business, the first thing I'm always getting them to concentrate on is selling to their current customer base and their past customers. And I even put a video together where I literally showed them that if they just did some numbers, I'm an accountant, sorry guys, it comes through now and then, where I showed a 10% increase in just taking the prospect and converting that, improving your systems in place, having a script, knowing what you're doing, so that you take the prospects that naturally come in and do a 10% increase in getting them to buy from you, a 10% increase in getting them to buy more when they're there, just buy 10% more, getting them to come back 10% more often, and getting them to refer 10% more friends. You literally, under my scenario, you can have almost a 40 to 50% increase in sales without spending a dollar. But too many of us are used to that going out there. What's the problem? Why is that? Why are so many salespeople? Is it something in there, and business owners too, something we're ingrained, or is it just nice to have that kill? That's kind of what I think. I think we enjoy the kill.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Wayne, this is a great topic that you brought up. This is one of my favorites. This is building share of customer. And I teach guys this all the time.
Wallet share, right?
Pardon?
Wallet share?
Yeah. Or share, basically how much of your products they're buying. You're building their share, a percentage of what they're doing with you. And first of all, to answer your question on why we do that, isn't new always better? Isn't the
supposedly
that's always greener? But we find out it's really not. But I mean, that's the tendency. Human nature is to think The grass is greener. That job would be so much better than this job, or that car would be so much better than the car I have. I heard one time, a long time ago, that the key to happiness is not basically seeking new things all the time. It's being happy with what you currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I don't think we do that. So it's human nature. But anybody who's watching this interview, now ignorance is no excuse. Now you're aware of that's your nature. It's your human nature. But when I work with salespeople, especially struggling salespeople, when I do a ride along, typically they don't send me to work with the super performers. They send me to work with the ones who are kind of marginal and they need to bring their performance up. And the first thing I say is, the easiest way for you to increase your sales right now is to make a list of all your current customers who are already ordering and call them up. And here's what you say. Hey John, are you happy with doing business with me so far? Have I treated you well? You like the product? You like my service? Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you're currently buying this product line for me, but there's about 5 other things that I can do. If I can guarantee the same service and interaction, would you be willing to expand your purchasing or expand the business you do with me to these other lines, or at least give it a shot? 9 times out of 10, they're going to do it because they trust you already. It's the surest and quickest way because the sales process is already largely done. They're already buying from you. They're a regular customer. So I think another thing that causes us not to call existing customers is because a lot of times we think that we're lucky to have their business in the state it's in. We're lucky that they're buying what they're buying from us. But really, if you go back to the solution provider mentality, we're not lucky. They're lucky because they have a problem and we're solving it for them with our product. So you got to think of it in those terms. So you're not lucky to have their business. They're lucky because you're helping them with a need or a problem they have. And if you look at it in those ways, then you can uncover other needs, other problems, and then maybe help solve them a little more. So just to recap what I just said there, sorry it was a long answer.
No, that's all right.
But that is the quickest way to build capital, is to call your existing customers, ask them to expand what they're doing with you based on the trust you already have.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it. But so many business owners don't go there, so it's amazing. You said something. I'm going to go off on a tangent a little bit. Super performers, and you don't always go with them. There's a book out there you probably have read, Strength Finders.
I haven't read that one yet.
You need to grab it. It's pretty good. And one of the things he talks about is it's much easier to improve somebody who's already proficient at something than to take somebody from down below up. And if some companies out there and they're watching right now thinking about hiring you, they really need to have you right along with their super people, because I think it's so much easier to take that person that already has that innate ability or has already thought about it and get them to become a superstar, somebody who's right there. They're just 1 or 2 things away from being that superstar. I wanted to be a baseball player until I saw my first curveball. You could have worked on me forever. I mean, I don't have the innate ability. I'm wearing glasses for starter, which some of them have, but most of them they've seen, as you know, have better than average eyesight. All right, wanted to be a pilot. That didn't happen. Same problems. I mean, we have certain abilities, and no matter what I try, I'm not going to get to that point. And sometimes if we're bringing in coaches, they tend to bring them in and put you guys with the people that, yeah, you can bring them up to average, maybe even good. But boy, if you worked with somebody who was good or great, you took them to superior, that would take a whole heck of a lot less work. And my argument would be have a heck of a lot bigger impact on the organization. You've coached people like that. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I totally agree with you, Wayne. That's a great observation. I wish the bulk of my business is not working with those types of folks you just described. It's working with the underperformers who are one step away from looking for a new job. And I would rather work with the good or the great people and make them superior. That's such a key point. Most of our lives we spend working on our weaknesses. I don't agree with that at all. There's some things that you could work on for years, you're never going to change. Or you might bring it up to mediocre or or good. Take your strength, which is really a spiritual gift from God. Take your strength, make it superior. And if you spend time working on that, because we're all gifted in certain ways, we all have certain things that make us unique. Make that one superior. That doesn't mean if if your procrastination is one of your weak areas or something like that. That doesn't mean you don't continue to make it marginal, or at least get it to the point where it's not causing you opportunities or something like that. But don't spend all your time reading books on procrastination. If you're great at building relationships, read more books on building relationships and become a true master at that. And I think that's better time spent.
You really do need to check out Strength Finders. You're right up their alley. And I think as managers, we tend to do that. When I'm coaching people on the HR side of it, and when I was working at Coca-Cola, I discovered this by accident. When the book came out, I'm kind of like, darn, I could have wrote that. Made a ton of money. But then this guy really took it far above where I was at. The analogy I use is, I can take a mule and put him in the Kentucky Derby. He ain't never going to win. But if I'm going down the Grand Canyon, I don't want a thoroughbred. First time, boom, I'm out to 1,000 feet too high with no safety net. Everybody has their own strengths, and a key as a manager is figuring out what those are and putting people in a place where they can succeed rather than putting them in a place where they fail. And I think that's one of the key points behind that book, and the idea behind, and that's probably the biggest thing I got out of it, was it's so much better to work with somebody in their strengths area and alleviate the other stuff. Organization, I organize out of necessity. It's not one of my strengths, but I kind of hire people around me and say, and they're told, your number one job is to keep me out of trouble. Because that's not my strength, and we survive. But if I spend all my time there, I could get to adequate, but it would stop me from doing what I do well. So you got off on that. It's not really what I wanted to cover, but I think that's really definitely worth it. I want to close. Is there something I didn't touch that you think a new business owner that's in sales should know? We touched a lot.
No, it's okay. One thing I'll say, you said about just now. You said, eventually things are going to come out. If you try to set somebody up to do something that they're not really meant to do, it'll eventually come out. I always like to say you can dress a duck up like a chicken, but eventually it's going to quack.
I like that. I'm going to steal it.
And when it quacks, you realize that you had somebody on the wrong way. I think, if you're a small business owner and you're building a small team, what you just said is critical. You have to recognize people's strengths, and that's one of the things I teach as well as team building. And through one way you can do that is through performance counseling. And when I say that, everybody's like, "Oh, I do my counseling." And performance counseling is not the HR pencil whip that you do once a year to keep the auditors happy, or whoever happy that you need to. Performance counseling is based on uncovering strengths, setting direction, reviewing performance over the last 90-day period. It's something I picked up from the Army, and it's something that if more business owners would do, they would have a lot more success with their teams. So basically, I guess what I'll say to close is a new business owner really just needs to focus on the people skills, focus on the sales, reflect and refine all the time, and recognize that, hey, I'm not a good salesperson, and I could be a decent one, but it would take me 2 years to get there. Then maybe it's time to hire an outside salesperson or marketer. And I think you have to recognize what your own strengths are, your own weaknesses, and if you just, a new business owner sometimes wants to do it all, and maybe they're not suited for that. Recognize that, be humble, and bring in an all-star cast to handle it for you. So that's what I think is key.
Yeah, that's key. That's fine. Kris, if anybody wants to work with you or hear some of your seminars or some of your motivational speeches you give, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. Best way is probably my cell phone. That's going to be 915-249-5502.
You're brave.
Pardon?
You're brave.
Well, I mean, Yeah, I just think that you go right to the source, man. You know, we bounce around with emails and all that, but
Yeah.
you know, voice to voice is the best way. They can email me. It's Kris with a K, Kris at smartstrategies.biz, which is biz, or my LinkedIn page is probably one of the best ways. Our website is under construction right now, so I won't point you there quite yet. We're working on one in the background that we're going to unveil here pretty soon, but my LinkedIn page is linkedin.com/in/Kris Yagel, altogether, KrisYagel.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for your time. There was a lot covered here, and it went pretty long, so hope people listen to it. We do put a transcript in there, too, so for those that read quicker than they listen. And we'll get you a copy.
My grammar's correct.
Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.